My brother paid $15,000 for a deepfake to destroy me, stole my girlfriend, ruined my life, and made me look like a liar. But years later, he got drunk and confessed everything on video. And now he's lost everything while I'm living the life he'll never have. I'm 28 years old. I own a gym in Portland. I'm married to the most incredible woman in the world. We have 3-year-old twins and another baby on the way. And my life is honestly better than I ever imagined it could be. But about 6 months ago, I received a video that basically validated everything I'd been saying for the past 5 years. A video that proved I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't a liar, and that my older brother is literally and completely a sociopath. And the thing is, even with that validation, even knowing I was right this whole time, I don't know if I'm ever going to fully process what he did to me. I mean, how do you process the fact that someone from your own blood paid $15,000 to destroy your entire life just because he wanted to steal your girlfriend? I guess I should start at the beginning. When we were kids, my brother Cameron was always the golden child. 2 years older than me, got good grades without trying too hard, was good at sports, had that natural charisma that makes people automatically love him. I was the younger brother who basically existed in his shadow, and my parents never bothered to hide it. When Cameron won a soccer game, it was like he'd cured cancer. Celebrations, special dinners, the whole complete show. But when I accomplished something, it was like, "Oh, that's nice, son. Pass me the salt." It wasn't abuse or anything dramatic like that. It was just that constant and exhausting favoritism that makes you feel like you're never enough, no matter how hard you tried. Anyway, we grew up. Cameron went to a prestigious university on a full scholarship, graduated with honors, got an amazing job in finance, basically fulfilled every expectation my parents had for him. I went to a normal state university, studied marketing, got a decent job at a medium-sized company. Nothing spectacular, but it was fine. I earned enough to live comfortably and do what I wanted. By the time we got to 2018, I was 23 years old. And honestly, I was in a good place in my life. I had my own apartment, a solid group of friends. I was in good shape because I went to the gym religiously, and then I met Olivia. I met her at the company's annual picnic, one of those awkward corporate events where everyone pretends they like spending time together outside the office. And she worked in the human resources department, so technically we didn't work directly together, but we'd seen each other around. She was beautiful, like really beautiful. Long brown hair, green eyes, smile that literally lit up a room. All that cliche that sounds fake, but in this case was completely true. We started talking by the drinks table. She made a joke about how terrible the lemonade was. I laughed. And somehow we ended up talking for 2 hours about everything and nothing. Movies, music, our families, the kind of things you share when you barely know someone but you feel that instant connection. We started dating like a week later, and honestly it was perfect for the first year. She was sweet, funny, supportive of my goals, and I was completely in love with her in that intense way you have when you're in your 20s, and you think you've found your person. After like 8 months of being together, we decided to move into an apartment together. Nothing fancy, but it was ours, and I remember thinking that I finally had something that was completely mine. Something Cameron couldn't overshadow because he was in his own life in another city, doing his finance things, and I was building something real with someone who loved me for who I was, not for how I compared to my perfect brother. Then Cameron came back to town. He got a transfer to a local office or something like that. I don't remember exactly the details because honestly I didn't care much, but suddenly he was back and wanting to reconnect with me. At first it was fine. We'd maintained minimal contact for years, but he seemed genuinely interested in my life, asked about my work, about Olivia. And I thought, well, maybe now that we're adults, we can have a real brother relationship without all that weird childhood dynamic. I introduced him to Olivia at a casual dinner, and she thought he was charming because, of course she did. Cameron has always been charming. It's like his superpower or whatever. But then I started noticing weird things. Like Cameron started showing up at places where he knew we were going to be. "Oh, what a coincidence, I saw you guys here." Or he'd send messages asking what we were doing that weekend. And when we went out in groups, he always managed to sit next to Olivia, to make her laugh, to touch her arm when he told stories. Olivia said I was being paranoid, that he was just being friendly and trying to get to know the important people in my life, and I felt like a jealous idiot for even mentioning it. So I stopped saying anything and just tried to ignore that uncomfortable feeling in my stomach every time I saw and them interact. In March 2019, I had to go to Seattle for a work conference. 3 days, nothing major, and Olivia stayed home because she had her own things to do. I told Cameron I was going to be away. I don't know why. I guess it was just casual conversation, and he said something like, "Oh great, enjoy the trip." I went to Seattle, attended the boring sessions, did networking, slept alone in my hotel room watching Netflix, basically the most innocent and unexciting thing you can imagine for a work trip. I came back on a Friday afternoon, tired and wanting to see Olivia, and when I got to the apartment, she was sitting on the couch with her laptop, and the way she looked at me, God, I'll never forget that look. It was like I was a complete stranger, like I was something disgusting that had just appeared in her living room. She asked me how the trip had been, and I said, "Fine. Tired, but fine." And then she just turned her laptop toward me and said, "Explain this to me." And there I was, or at least what looked exactly like me, in a video that had clearly been filmed in a hotel room, doing things, sexual things with a woman who definitely wasn't Olivia. The video lasted like 2 minutes. The quality was good, too good, and I stood there, with my suitcase still in my hand, trying to process what I was seeing because my brain literally couldn't understand how this video existed of something that had never, ever happened. I told her it wasn't me, that I had no idea what the hell that was, that I would never do something like that, and she started crying and yelling at me to stop lying, that the evidence was right there, that how could I be so shameless to deny it when she could see with her own eyes that it was me. I tried to explain to her about deepfakes, about how technology can now make fake videos that look completely real, and she just looked at me like I was making up ridiculous excuses, like I was insulting her intelligence. I begged her to believe me. I showed her dated photos of my activities in Seattle. I showed her my complete conference itinerary. I told her we could go together to have experts analyze the video, but she had already decided. She had already condemned me in her mind, and nothing I said was going to change that. I asked her who had sent her the video, and she said it had been Cameron, that he had sent it to her that morning saying he needed her to see something important, that a friend of his in Seattle had been at the same hotel and had seen this video circulating and thought she should know. And that's when everything clicked in my head. All that discomfort I had felt, all those times he had been too close to her, too interested, too present. I told her that Cameron had created that video, that it was obvious he had done this to separate us, and she told me I was sick, that I was so desperate to cover up my betrayal, that I was willing to accuse my own brother of something so elaborate and ridiculous. I left the apartment. That night, because she asked me to leave, I stayed with my friend Andrew, and I spent the whole weekend trying to figure out what the hell to do. On Monday, Olivia had shared the video with our mutual friends, with people from the office, basically with anyone who knew both of us. And by Tuesday, I was in the Human Resources office, being interrogated, because apparently having a video like that circulating was bad for the company's image, even if it was fake. And when I said it was fake and asked them to bring in experts to verify it, they told me the company wasn't going to spend resources investigating my personal life, and that it was best if I resigned voluntarily instead of being fired. I lost my job in less than a week. I lost my apartment because I couldn't pay the rent by myself, and Olivia didn't want to see me at all. I lost most of my friends because they had all seen the video and decided to believe it instead of believing me when I told them it was fake, and the few who said they believed me still distanced themselves because the situation was too uncomfortable and dramatic for them. I called my parents trying to explain what was happening, and my dad literally cut me off in the middle of my explanation and told me to stop embarrassing the family with my lies, that what I had done was already bad enough, without adding insulting their intelligence by pretending it never happened. Cameron, of course, was very publicly supportive, posted on social media about how he was devastated by his younger brother's actions, about how sometimes the people you love disappoint you in the worst possible ways. And then, like 2 months after my life completely exploded, I found out through Andrew, who still talked to some of our mutual acquaintances, that Cameron and Olivia were dating. They didn't waste time. They were literally together in public, going to the same restaurants where she and I used to go, posting photos together on Instagram, all very public and very, deliberate. And when I confronted Cameron on the phone, because I was stupid enough to think that maybe a direct confrontation would make him admit something, he just said he couldn't control if two people fell in love, that sometimes things just happen, and that maybe if I hadn't been a cheater, things would have been different. I had no job, no girlfriend, no friends, no support from my family. I had absolutely nothing. Except Andrew, who was basically the only human being on the planet who believed me when I said the video was fake. Andrew worked at a gym in Portland and had been talking about moving there to open his own place, and he told me, "You know what, let's go together. Let's start over where nobody knows us, and nobody has preconceived ideas about you." So that's what I did. I packed the few things I still had, got in my 2015 Honda Civic that was barely still running, and drove with Andrew to Portland in May 2019, feeling like I was 23 years old, and my life was already over. The first months in Portland were, honestly, terrible. I was depressed, bitter, angry all the time, and Andrew basically had to drag me through each day. I got a job at the gym where he worked, just cleaning equipment and helping with basic tasks. Nothing that required much human interaction because I was too broken to pretend I was okay. Little by little, I started to improve, very slowly. Like it took me months to get to a point where I could go a whole day without thinking about Olivia or Cameron or how unfair everything was. Andrew and I started planning to open our own gym. We pooled our savings, which in my case wasn't much, but he had some saved up. We got a small loan, and in 2021 we opened our place. Small but decent, focused on functional training and group classes. And then I met Lauren. She came to the gym like 3 times a week. Kindergarten teacher, genuine smile, contagious laugh, and she was so different from Olivia in every possible way. Shorter, blonde hair, freckles, but above all, she was different in how she was as a person, calmer, more patient, more real somehow. We started talking after her classes. Then those conversations turned into coffees, and when I finally told her my whole story, including the deepfake part and how my life had exploded, she just looked at me and said, "That sounds absolutely horrible and completely unfair. I believe you." And it was the first time in years that someone besides Andrew had said those words and really meant them. We got married in 2022. A small ceremony on the beach with just our close friends. And my parents didn't come because they had basically cut off contact with me completely after all the drama. And honestly, by that point, I had made peace with the fact that they had chosen to believe Cameron over me, and probably were never going to change their minds. Lauren and I had twins in 2022, Ben and Sarah, and being a father basically transformed me into a completely different person. Like all that bitterness and anger I had been carrying started to fade because now I had these 2 perfect little people who depended on me and who loved me unconditionally, no matter what fake video of me existed on the internet. Life was good, really good. The gym was growing, Lauren was happy in her job, the twins were healthy and adorable, and I had reached a place where I rarely thought about my old life, about Cameron, about my parents, about Olivia, because all of that felt like it had happened to a different person in a different life. And then, last April, I got a message from my old friend Brian, one of the few who had maintained very occasional contact with me over the years, and the message said, "You need to see this," and there was a link to a YouTube video that already had like 500,000 views. The video was from a party, clearly someone recording casually with their phone, and there was Cameron, completely drunk, surrounded by people, and he was telling a story about how he got his wife, and, literally, word for word, he said, "You guys aren't going to believe this, but I paid $15,000 for a professional deepfake of my brother to make it look like he was cheating on his girlfriend, and it worked perfectly. She left him. I came in to comfort her. And now we're married and have a son. It was the best investment I've ever made." And everyone in the video was laughing like it was the funniest anecdote they'd ever heard. Like Cameron had just told a brilliant joke, instead of admitting he had destroyed his brother's life for $15,000 and a woman. The video went viral within hours. People were sharing it everywhere with titles like, "Man admits creating deepfake to steal brother's girlfriend." And suddenly my phone was exploding with messages from people I hadn't talked to in years. Apologies, expressions of shock, people saying they couldn't believe Cameron had done that, that he had always seemed like such a good person. My parents called me crying. My mom saying she was so sorry, that they had made a terrible mistake, that they should never have treated me that way, and I just sat there listening to her but not really feeling anything. Like the validation I had wanted so desperately 5 years ago just didn't matter anymore because my current life was so different and so much better than the life I had lost. Cameron lost his job almost immediately. His company didn't want to be associated with someone who publicly admitted to committing such elaborate fraud and manipulation. And apparently his marriage to Olivia also exploded because she finally realized she had been manipulated too, that Cameron had used her as a pawn in his sick game, and he had abandoned her after she found out the truth, leaving her alone with their son they had together, a kid who's now like 4 years old and basically has no dad because Cameron just disappeared from their lives. Olivia contacted me like a month after the video went viral, a long message on Facebook explaining everything, apologizing profusely, telling me she had ruined my life by not believing me, that she had been so stupid and blind, that she understood if I could never forgive her, but she needed me to know how sorry she was. I responded with something short and polite, like I appreciate the apology. I hope you and your son are well, but I have no interest in reconnecting. And it was weird because part of me still remembered how much I had loved her, but that person who loved her didn't really exist anymore. He had been replaced by someone who loved Lauren, who had a completely different family, who had built a completely new life. Lauren and I talked a lot about all of this, about how to handle the apologies that kept coming, about whether I should reconnect with my parents who now wanted to be part of our lives, and she was incredibly patient and understanding while I processed everything. In the end, I decided to maintain very limited contact with my parents, like occasional calls and photos of the grandkids because they're old, and I guess part of me still loves them despite everything. But it's not a close relationship, and it's never going to be. The damage is done, and I can't just forget that they abandoned me when I needed them most. As for Cameron, I haven't spoken to him once since the video came out, and honestly, I have no desire to. There's nothing he can say that would change what he did or that would make it all worth it. The only thing I did, related to that whole situation, was establish a trust fund for Cameron and Olivia's son, a kid who didn't ask to be born in the middle of all this mess, and who's now growing up without a father because his dad is a sociopath who abandoned him. I put like $50,000 in the fund, set up so he can access it when he turns 18. And I let Olivia know through my lawyer, but also made it very clear that this doesn't mean I want to have contact with her or the kid. It's simply the right thing to do, because that kid is technically my nephew, and it's not his fault. His father is a garbage human being. Now it's October 2025. Lauren is pregnant with our third child. The gym is doing better than ever. Because honestly, after the whole story went viral, a bunch of people started coming specifically to support me, which is weird but appreciated. And Ben and Sarah are in preschool, being the most adorable kids on the planet. My life is good, really genuinely good in a way that never would have been possible if I had stayed in my old life, and that's probably the weirdest part of this whole situation. The fact that the worst betrayal of my life ended up leading me to the best life I could have imagined. Does it still make me angry to think about what Cameron did? Of course. Does it still hurt to remember how my parents abandoned me without even giving me the benefit of the doubt? Absolutely. But I also know that if none of that had happened, I never would have met Lauren, never would have had Ben and Sarah, never would have opened my own business with Andrew, never would have ended up in Portland, living this life I love. I'm not saying I forgave Cameron or that everything happened for a reason or some motivational nonsense like that, because honestly, he can go to hell for what he did to me. But I am saying that somehow, I survived the worst thing that could happen to me and found something better on the other side. Last week, Andrew and I were closing the gym after a long day, and he asked me if I ever regretted moving to Portland, leaving behind my whole old life. And I told him no, not for a single second. Because that old life wasn't really mine anyway. It was just me trying to exist in Cameron's shadow, trying to win approval from parents who were never going to value me the way I needed, trying to maintain a relationship with a woman who in the end didn't know me well enough to believe me when it mattered most. This life, the one I have now, with Lauren, and the kids, and the gym and real friends who support me unconditionally, this is my real life, the one I built from scratch after everything else was destroyed. And nobody can take it away from me, because this time it's built on true foundations, instead of on the sand of relationships that were never really solid to begin with.